He lost his sight, and then he became one of the most celebrated humorists since Mark Twain. Get ready to be inspired because today on The Good Old Days, I invite you to escape into the life and hard times of James Thurber and the imagination which made him one of the greatest American humorists of the 20th century. Thurber was born on December 8, 1894 in Columbus, Ohio, to a family of eclectic, though otherwise dysfunctional individuals whose depictions would become mainstays in his work. Born into these benign and homely circumstances, Thurber's life seems set to be an unremarkable one. However, at the age of 7, his story would have a twist of fate. While playing a game of William Tell in the backyard with his brothers, James was struck in the eye by an arrow. Don't worry, it gets worse. A local doctor, erroneous as it was, advised James's parents to keep the arrow in the young boy's eye for several days, resulting in a condition known as sympathetic ophthalmia, a kind of autoimmune response which costed him much of the vision in his remaining eye. With his vision now receded to the point of near complete blindness, the young James Thurber defied everyone's expectations of him for the first time. With what little vision he had left, he escaped into the realm of his fantasies and began to draw with ceaseless passion all the things his mind could see which others could not. This newly established talent for drawing, coupled with an unbridled love for reading literature, would excel the young James Thurber through his studies, and would eventually provide him with a number of opportunities to work as a writer, editor, and cartoonist for various publications throughout his early years. However, work was not always easy to come by, or consistent, so the young Thurber struggled to hold down a job. But his humor and witticism were undeniable, and it would not be long before his unique and neurotic vision would become recognized. In 1927, James Thurber began working for The New Yorker. His career as a published author began 2 years later with the publication of he and his colleague E.B. White's short story, Is Sex Necessary? A spoof of Freudian sexual psychology, which was an immediate hit and legitimized Thurber as a prominent and respected humorist. Thurber's writing encapsulated how many people of the early to mid-20th century felt about the creeping influence of technology, as well as poking fun at the chronic anxieties that came with the rapidity of the modern age. No greater example of this can be found than in his opus, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. In this story, Thurber writes of a character whose internal fantasies of heroism and daring do illustrate a pervasive ennui, more or less reflecting that of his own subconscious. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty would go on to be Thurber's most recognizable work and would garner 2 film adaptations, one all the way back in 1947, and then another more recent one in 2013 directed and starring Ben Stiller. These sort of attitudes mirrored those shared of his readers, mostly men, who felt as though the locus of control in their life was slipping into the external as a result of the rapidly changing political, economic, and cultural climates of the 20th century. Thurber would continuously contribute to The New Yorker and publish his own works well into his old age. By the early 60s, Thurber's health had begun to decline, and on November 2, 1961, at the age of 66, James Thurber's story came to an end. Although his life was marked by struggles and setbacks, his legacy as a master storyteller and humorist endures, inspiring generations of readers with his unique perspective on life and laughter. The characteristics of what would later become known as the Thurber Man, namely neurosis, self-deprecation, and a penchant for overthinking, can be seen contemporaneously in characters of famous writers such as Woody Allen and Larry David, and in the writings of authors such as Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller. Now, Thurber's work is not without its criticism. His depiction of women as bitter, unimaginative pragmatists was myopic and misogynist, and more so reflected his own experiences rather than describing any universal truth about gender dynamics. So, for that reason, much of his work might easily be dismissed as antiquated boomer humor. However, his influence cannot be understated. James Thurber, stricken with blindness from boyhood, became the most celebrated American humorist since Mark Twain. Want more history content like this? Follow The Good Old Days on all social medias, share the video, and tag a friend who loves history. We'll see you in the next one. Brought to you by ScripTalk, talking prescription labels for the visually impaired.